Have you ever been judged by someone who thought they knew exactly who you were? Emily Parker knew that feeling all too well. At 29 years old, she worked as a customer service representative at one of the largest retail companies in America. Every morning, she arrived before everyone else, carried her own coffee, parked her 10-year-old sedan in the far corner of the employee lot, and quietly did her job. To most people, Emily looked ordinary. What nobody knew was that her father owned the company, and Emily wanted it that way. Before we go any further, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And while you are at it, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Her father, Robert Parker, had built Parker Retail Group from a single neighborhood store into a billion-dollar empire with more than 12,000 employees across the country. Growing up, Emily watched people change the moment they learned who her father was. Teachers suddenly became nicer. Classmates wanted favors. Even adults treated her differently. So when she graduated from college, she made a decision. She would build her own reputation. No special treatment. No executive position. No shortcuts. She applied for a regular job at one of her father's regional offices using only her middle and last name. The hiring managers never connected the dots. For 3 years, Emily worked her way up through the company like everyone else. And she loved it. Until the day Daniel Brooks became CEO. Daniel was intelligent, ambitious, and known for one thing above all else: results. The board loved him because profits increased every quarter. Investors loved him because the stock price kept rising. But employees? That was another story. Daniel believed people were either assets or liabilities. Nothing in between. Within 6 months, he had eliminated dozens of positions, cut employee benefits, and created a culture where everyone lived in fear of making a mistake. Emily noticed the change immediately. The office that once felt supportive now felt cold. People stopped helping each other. Managers became nervous. Employees stayed late not because they wanted to, but because they were afraid. One rainy Tuesday morning, Emily arrived at work carrying a stack of customer reports she had spent the weekend preparing. As she entered the elevator, she noticed an older janitor struggling to push a heavy maintenance cart through the lobby. Without hesitation, she set her reports down and helped him. The man smiled. "Thank you," he said. "You'd be surprised how many people walk right past me." Emily smiled back. "My dad taught me to help people whenever I can." She had no idea someone was watching. Standing across the lobby was Daniel Brooks. And what he saw would change both of their lives forever. Unfortunately, not in the way Emily expected. The following morning, Emily received an email from Human Resources. Subject: immediate meeting required. Her stomach tightened. She couldn't think of any reason she'd be called into HR. Still, she gathered her notebook and headed upstairs. When she entered the conference room, Daniel Brooks was already sitting at the table. His expression was cold. Beside him sat the HR director. "Please have a seat, Emily." The moment she sat down, she knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Daniel folded his hands on the table. "Emily, we've received several reports regarding your conduct." Emily blinked. "My conduct?" "Yes." The HR director avoided eye contact. Daniel slid a folder across the table. Inside were several printed emails. Customer complaints. Performance reports. Internal evaluations. Emily's confusion deepened as she scanned the documents. Some of them carried her name, but the details made no sense. Projects she had never worked on. Mistakes she had never made. Complaints she had never received. "There must be some mistake," she said. Daniel leaned back. "I disagree." Emily looked toward HR. Surely someone would speak up. No one did. For the first time in 3 years, she felt completely alone. "Mr. Brooks," she said carefully, "I've consistently received excellent reviews. My supervisor can verify that. We've already reviewed everything. But these reports aren't mine. Are you accusing management of falsifying documents?" The question hit like a slap. "No. I'm saying there has to be an error." Daniel sighed dramatically. The kind of sigh people make when they've already decided the outcome. "Emily, this company is moving in a new direction." A chill ran through her body. She suddenly understood. This meeting had never been about finding the truth. The decision had already been made. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately." The room went silent. Emily stared at him. 3 years. 3 years of hard work. 3 years of arriving early. 3 years of sacrificing weekends. Gone in a single sentence. "You're firing me?" Daniel nodded. "Security will escort you to collect your belongings." The humiliation was almost worse than the loss itself. "Can you at least tell me what I actually did?" Daniel looked directly at her. "Not everyone is executive material, Emily." The words landed harder than he intended. Because he didn't know who he was talking to. Emily slowly stood. Tears threatened to form, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Without another word, she walked out. As she crossed the office floor, employees looked up from their desks. Whispers spread immediately. Nobody knew the details, but everyone knew what it meant when HR escorted someone out. Emily packed her things quietly. A framed photo, a notebook, a coffee mug. 3 years of memories reduced to a cardboard box. As she stepped into the elevator, she heard someone call her name. It was Sarah, her closest friend in the office. What happened? Emily forced a smile. I got fired. Sarah's face turned pale. What? What? I honestly don't know. Sarah hugged her tightly. And for a moment, Emily almost broke down. Almost. But she held herself together until she reached her car. The second she closed the door, the tears came. Not because of the job. Because of the unfairness. Because nobody had listened. Because someone had decided she wasn't worth the truth. For nearly 20 minutes, she sat in the parking lot crying. Then her phone rang. The screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Dad. Emily wiped her eyes before answering. Hey. Immediately, Robert Parker knew something was wrong. Dad voice, he always called it. The ability to hear pain before words. Emily. His voice softened. Why are you crying? She tried to laugh. I'm not. Emily. The silence that followed told him everything. What happened? She looked back at the company building. The company her father had spent 40 years building. The company that had just thrown her away. I got fired. There was a pause. A very long pause. When Robert Parker finally spoke again, his voice had changed. What did you just say? Emily explained everything. The meeting. The reports. The accusations. The termination. By the time she finished, her father wasn't speaking at all. That scared her more than anger would have. Because Robert Parker rarely got angry. But when he became quiet, people paid attention. Finally, he asked one question. Who made the decision? Emily hesitated. Dad, please don't. Emily. She closed her eyes. Daniel Brooks. Another silence. Then Robert Parker spoke 6 words that would soon change everything. Come have dinner with me tonight. Nothing more. Nothing less. But hundreds of miles away, inside a private office overlooking Manhattan, Robert Parker was already canceling every meeting on his calendar. Because for the first time in years, the founder was coming back. The next morning, Daniel Brooks walked into headquarters feeling better than he had in weeks. The previous quarter's numbers had exceeded expectations. Investors were happy. The board was happy. And as far as he was concerned, removing employees who didn't fit his vision was simply good business. What Daniel didn't know was that someone had arrived at the building before sunrise. Someone whose name was still engraved on the plaque in the lobby. Robert Parker. Founder. Owner. Chairman. Most employees had never met him. Many newer workers didn't even recognize him, which was exactly how he wanted it. Dressed in a simple navy jacket and carrying a coffee cup, Robert quietly entered the building. No announcement. No entourage. No warning. Over the next 3 days, he did something he hadn't done in years. He listened. He sat in break rooms. He ate lunch in employee cafeterias. He spoke with receptionists, cashiers, warehouse workers, customer service representatives, managers. The stories were disturbingly similar. People were exhausted. Morale was collapsing. Talented employees were leaving. Good workers were being punished for minor mistakes. Several departments were operating in fear. And one name kept appearing. Daniel Brooks. By the end of the 3rd day, Robert sat alone in a conference room reviewing reports. His jaw tightened. Numbers looked impressive on paper. But underneath those numbers was a culture slowly breaking apart. Then he found Emily's file. The same file Daniel had used to justify her termination. Robert frowned. Something wasn't right. The dates didn't match. Several complaints were duplicated. Performance reviews had been altered. And one document appeared to have been edited after submission. His expression darkened. For 40 years, he had protected the company's reputation. Now someone was manipulating records inside his own organization. That afternoon, Robert called for a special executive meeting. The announcement spread through headquarters like wildfire. Employees whispered throughout the building. Why would the founder suddenly return? Why was every executive being summoned? Why did Daniel Brooks look nervous for the first time in years? At precisely 2 p.m., the executive conference room filled. Vice presidents, department heads, board members, legal counsel. Everyone waited. Then the door opened. Robert Parker entered. The room immediately stood. Daniel forced a smile. Mr. Parker, it's an honor. Robert nodded politely. Please sit. His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that made experienced executives uncomfortable. For nearly 30 minutes, Robert reviewed company performance. Revenue, growth, expansion, operational targets. Daniel relaxed. Maybe this was just a routine review after all. Then Robert closed the presentation. The room became silent. Before we conclude, he said, there is one final matter. Several executives exchanged glances. Robert picked up a folder. Emily's folder. Daniel felt a sudden knot form in his stomach. This employee was terminated last week. The room remained quiet. Daniel straightened his tie. Yes, we determined her performance was below company standards. Robert looked directly at him. Did you? Something in his tone made Daniel uneasy. Robert slowly opened the folder. I've spent the last 3 days investigating this case. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence became suffocating. Then Robert held up a document. This report was altered. Another document. This complaint was duplicated. Another. This evaluation was changed after submission. The color drained from Daniel's face. Several board members looked stunned. Robert continued. The evidence used to terminate this employee was false. The room erupted. People began talking over each other. Questions flew across the table. Daniel attempted to respond. There must be some misunderstanding. Robert's eyes locked onto his. No. The room fell silent again. There is no misunderstanding. For the first time, Daniel looked genuinely afraid. Because Robert Parker wasn't finished. Not even close. And what he was about to reveal would change everything. Daniel swallowed hard. The room felt smaller. Hotter. Every eye was now fixed on him. For years, he had been the most powerful person in the company. The man who controlled promotions, raises, terminations, entire careers. But at this moment, sitting across from Robert Parker, he felt powerless. Mr. Parker, Daniel began carefully. If mistakes were made, I'm willing to correct them. Robert stared at him. Mistakes. The founder's voice was calm. Dangerously calm. You call falsified reports a mistake? Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Several board members exchanged uneasy looks. One of them finally spoke. Daniel, did you personally approve this termination? Daniel hesitated. That hesitation told everyone what they needed to know. Yes. The room grew silent again. Robert slowly stood. No one moved. No one dared. For decades, Robert Parker had been known as a patient man, a fair man, a thoughtful leader. But everyone in that room knew there was one thing he would never tolerate. Dishonesty. You fired a loyal employee based on manipulated evidence. Robert's voice echoed through the room. You never conducted a proper review. You never interviewed her supervisor. You never verified the complaints. You simply decided she wasn't valuable. Daniel felt his heartbeat pounding. Sir, with all due respect, I was acting in the company's best interests. Robert nodded. Then he asked a question no one expected. Tell me, Daniel. The founder leaned forward. What do you know about Emily Parker? Daniel blinked. The question caught him off guard. Not much. Robert nodded again. Exactly. The room remained silent. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Robert took a deep breath. Then he spoke the sentence that would be remembered inside the company for years. The employee you fired. He paused. Is my daughter. The room froze. Completely. Utterly. Frozen. One executive actually dropped his pen. Another gasped. The HR director looked like she might faint. Daniel stared at Robert. Certain he had heard wrong. I'm sorry. His voice shook. What? Robert's expression never changed. Emily Parker is my daughter. The silence became overwhelming. Daniel's face lost all color. His mind raced. No, that couldn't be possible. Emily, the quiet employee from customer service? The woman he had escorted out of the building? The woman he had publicly humiliated? The owner's daughter? No, he whispered. Robert's eyes hardened. Do you know what makes this worse? Nobody dared answer. Emily never wanted special treatment. Robert looked around the room. She applied here on her own. Worked here for 3 years. Earned every promotion. Accepted every challenge. She wanted to prove she could succeed without my name. Several board members lowered their eyes. Robert continued. And despite all of that, his voice cracked slightly. The first sign of emotion anyone had seen. You treated her like she was disposable. Daniel felt sick. Not because of the revelation, but because he suddenly realized something. If Emily had been willing to work her way up from the bottom despite having access to unimaginable privilege, then she had probably been one of the company's best employees. And he had never even noticed. The room remained silent. Finally, a board member spoke. Mr. Parker. He cleared his throat. What action do you recommend? Robert looked directly at Daniel. For several seconds, no one breathed. Then Robert answered. That decision won't be mine. Confused murmurs spread across the room. What do you mean? Another executive asked. Robert picked up his phone. I invited someone here today. The conference room doors opened. Everyone turned. And there she was. Emily. Walking into the room. The same woman who had left the building carrying a cardboard box. The same woman who had cried in her car believing no one cared. The same woman Daniel had dismissed as insignificant. Now every executive in the company stood as she entered. Every single one. Daniel couldn't even look her in the eyes. Emily stopped beside her father. The room waited. Robert placed a hand on her shoulder. Then he said something nobody expected. Emily. His voice softened. This company belongs to you one day. The room fell silent again. And before that day comes, he smiled proudly. I think these people deserve to know what kind of leader you are. Emily looked around the room. At the board members. At the executives. At the people who had doubted her. And finally, at Daniel. The man who had fired her. The man who expected revenge. The man who expected humiliation. The man who expected her to destroy him. But Emily had something else in mind. Something that would shock everyone. Something that would shock everyone. Emily looked directly at Daniel. The room held its breath. Several executives expected her to demand his immediate termination. Others expected anger, humiliation, revenge. After all, she had every reason to seek it. Daniel couldn't even bring himself to meet her eyes. For the first time in his career, he felt ashamed. Truly ashamed. Then Emily spoke. 3 years ago, I joined this company because I wanted to learn. Her voice was calm, steady, confident. I wanted to understand what our employees experience every day. Nobody interrupted. I wanted to know what it feels like to work hard for an opportunity. She glanced around the room, and I learned something important. The executives listened carefully. The people sitting in our break rooms. The people answering customer calls. The people stocking shelves and cleaning floors. They are not numbers. Several employees in attendance lowered their heads. They are the reason this company exists. A few board members nodded. Emily then turned toward Daniel. The room became tense again. Mr. Brooks. Daniel slowly looked up. Their eyes met. You never knew who I was. His throat tightened. No. Emily nodded. And honestly, a faint smile appeared on her face. That wasn't the problem. Confused expressions spread across the room. The problem wasn't that you didn't know I was the owner's daughter. She paused. The problem was how you treated someone you believed wasn't important. The words hit harder than any insult ever could. Silence filled the room. Daniel felt every eye turn toward him. Because everyone knew she was right. If he had treated Emily differently only because she was the owner's daughter, then he would have missed the entire point. Emily continued. You didn't fail because you made a mistake. You failed because you stopped seeing people. The room remained perfectly still. Somewhere near the back, a woman quietly wiped away a tear. Daniel stared at the table. Every decision, every shortcut, every dismissal, every unfair termination, they all came rushing back. For the first time, he saw them through someone else's eyes. And he didn't like what he saw. Finally, he stood. No excuses, no defenses, no arguments. He looked directly at Emily, then at Robert, and then at the board. I was wrong. The room froze. Nobody expected that, especially not from Daniel Brooks. I became obsessed with results. His voice cracked. I convinced myself that numbers mattered more than people. He looked down, and in the process, I failed as a leader. The room remained silent. Because everyone knew how difficult those words were to say, a board member finally spoke. Daniel Brooks. His expression was serious. Based on the findings presented today, the board has voted unanimously to remove you as CEO effective immediately. No one reacted. The decision felt inevitable. Daniel simply nodded, as if he had expected it, as if he knew he deserved it. Security wasn't called. He wasn't escorted out. Instead, he quietly gathered his belongings and headed toward the door. Halfway there, he stopped, then turned back. Emily. She looked up. I'm sorry. The apology was simple, but it was real. Emily nodded. Thank you. And just like that, he left. The door closed behind him. An era was over. A new one was beginning. Months later, Parker Retail Group looked very different. Employee satisfaction reached record levels. Customer loyalty increased. Turnover dropped dramatically. The company wasn't just growing. It was healing. And at the center of that change was Emily. Not as the owner's daughter. Not as a future heir. But as a leader. The kind of leader employees trusted. The kind of leader people wanted to follow. One afternoon, nearly a year later, Emily walked through the headquarters lobby. As she passed the front desk, she noticed an elderly maintenance worker struggling with a heavy cart. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. Need a hand? The man smiled. Thank you. Together, they pushed the cart across the lobby. A young employee nearby watched the interaction. Curious, she turned to a coworker. Who is that woman? The coworker smiled. That's Emily Parker. The owner. The coworker shook her head. No. A smile spread across his face. She's something much more important. The young employee frowned. What? He looked across the lobby as Emily laughed with the maintenance worker. Then he answered. A leader. And some people spend their whole lives chasing power, only to discover that respect was the real treasure all along. Tell me what you think about this story in the comments. I read every single one, and conversations like this are why we are here. And if this story reached something in you, if it made you think about someone in your life or something in yourself, please share it and subscribe. Someone in your circle needs to hear it. We will see you in the next one.